Tagalog version, 5 bagay na kailangan malaman ng bawat Pilipino. So keep tuned to that because it just opened a few days ago, the channel. So we just
5
published...
things every Filipino...
Okay lang, okay lang.
should know about history. Number 1. Philippine history did not start with the Spanish colonization. Our colonizers tell us that the archipelago, which they later named the Philippines, had been colonized many times before. According to Colin Combs and San Agustin in a collection of early texts from 1493 to 1898, for to endeavor to determine the first settlers of these lands, whence and how they came, whether they were Carthaginians, Jews, Spaniards, Phoenicians, Greeks, Chinese, Tartars, etc., is reserved for God. The Spaniards knew that the list of peoples had once settled our lands in the distant past. They just didn't know when and in what sequence. Carthage, around 900 BC to 146 BC, was a Phoenician colony in the Mediterranean North African coast that was an important trading and military empire of its age. Spain. It may seem strange that they included Spaniards, since they themselves were Spaniards, but Spain had also become home to the important Phoenician colonies of Cadiz and Ibiza from the first millennium BC. Greece. Greek Phoenician colonies had been established in Ionia and Thrace by 800 BC to facilitate trade relations in that region and bring wealth back home. Phoenicians would have been used in this case to refer to the ancient city-states, the mother cities along the coast of Lebanon, like Tyre, Sidon, and Byblos. Israel. According to the Phoenician historian Sanchuniathon and the 1st century Jewish historian Josephus, the Jews had teamed up with the Phoenicians in a maritime trading venture to the land of gold, the lands of Tarshish and Ophir, during the reign of King Solomon, which could explain the Jewish settlements that our colonizers wrote off, and even the myths of our indigenous people, that the lost tribes of Israel may be found on our islands. China. China's colonization of ancient Philippines, like the other civilizations on the list, cannot be found in any of our modern history books, but our Spanish colonizers claim that they did conquer and settle in parts of these islands, especially the Chinese, from whose histories and their remains found in various parts, it is found that they were masters of all these archipelagos. Number 2. The Philippines has an ancient megacity hidden in plain sight. Over the past decades, rapid erosion caused by the loss of mangrove cover, coupled with the rising of the sea levels and devastating typhoons, have uncovered what appears to be massive man-made structures that had been hidden under the soil of Luzon for centuries. History professor Percival Manuel was approached by a student from Our Lady of Fatima University in Valenzuela City to explain the existence of strange structures around her home in Binuwangan Island, Bulacan. Organizing an informal exploratory expedition with the Kasaysayan Hunters group to which he belonged, the team was overwhelmed by the extent and size of the structures, which time-lapse satellite images showed to have been fairly recently exposed by the violence of Manila Bay waters. They found walls that went on and on in straight lines as far as the eye can see. Flat, rammed earth, lupang matigas platform islands with no elevations or dips, geometrically shaped with 90-degree angles and connected to the walls. Black sand islands over a kilometer long, completely surrounded by protective walls and connected to the rammed earth islands by the walls. Rivers and creeks that were guided and controlled by the rammed earth walls with 90-degree angles and sudden drops. Walls may be observed along Kalayaan Creek and numerous unnamed creeks and waterways. Along Binuwangan, Lawa, Hulo, and San Pascual, rivers with earthen walls include Batasan River, Muzon River, Tampalit River, Tulian River, Maykawayan River, and Santa Maria River. Check out these walled waterways in Google Maps. The Kasaysayan Hunters also discovered these same structures existing under the uneroded soil in Balagtas, Bulacan, over 10 kilometers away, making us wonder exactly how big was this ancient city. Number 3. Prehistoric Philippines was very, very, very rich. The illustrated Boxer Codex from the late 16th century informs us of the peoples of the Philippine archipelago from pre-Hispanic times. It inspires more questions than answers. Why did the ancient indigenous Filipinos laden with gold appear wealthier than even the Chinese? The Ayala Museum exhibit on gold of ancestors with over 1,000 exquisite gold artifacts from pre-colonial times corroborate the contents of the Boxer Codex. When the Spaniards first discovered the Philippines, early observers reported that some large wooden houses were decorated with a facade of gold, and that there are some chiefs on this island who have on their person 10 or 12,000 ducats worth of gold and jewels. To say nothing of the land, slaves, and mines they own, there are so many of these chiefs that they are innumerable. Likewise, the individual subjects of these chiefs have a great quantity of the said jewels of gold, which they wear on their persons, bracelets, chains, and earrings of solid gold, daggers of gold, and other very rich trinkets. These are generally seen among them, and not only the chiefs and freemen have plenty of these jewels, but even slaves possess and wear golden trinkets upon their persons, openly and freely. Spanish records say that the natives had gold mines that may have been active from 1000 BC. Many of our ancestors hid the locations of the gold mines in order to keep them from the gold-hungry Spaniards. Unfortunately, they did their job so well that we are unaware where many of these mines are today. Number 4. Pre-Hispanic Philippines was an international trade hub. Not only were the ancient Filipinos rich with their own natural resources and gold, but they had an abundance of the international currency of that age, beads. When nations want to trade, they need an accepted international trade currency like the US dollar. In ancient times, beads became accepted as a form of international currency. Beads were not only ornamental, but they were a symbol of status, wealth, and ritual. Each bead became a tiny time capsule that told the story of the artist's culture and its wearer's beliefs. Thousands and thousands of the rarest and most precious beads are found in the waters in the land of the Philippine Islands, as well as treasured heirlooms worn by the indigenous tribes. Bicephalous jade traded in Vietnam, Burma, Cambodia, Thailand, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the Philippines. Z beads from Tibet, carnelian beads from the Middle East, agate beads from India, nephrite beads from China, Egyptian mosaic glass face beads, Phoenician glass beads are just some of the ancient beads our ancestors left behind, revealing that Filipinos had been savvy international traders even before we had been discovered. Number 5. Prehistoric Philippines had a name. Surely such a rich land and popular international destination would have had a name known to its visitors and its residents. There is an important piece of missing real estate known to all the lands previously mentioned. Just a name without a definite land, which would be a perfect match for our land in search of our ancient name. There is a lost land that occurs in the histories, myths, and traditions of the Phoenicians, Jews, Greeks, and Chinese. The missing piece of real estate was supposedly a part of a larger landmass that the Greeks called Aurea Chersonesus, the Golden Peninsula, in which Crete, the island of gold, would be found. China called it Chinlin, Golden Neighbor, and a specific island within this larger area was given the name Chinchu, Gold Island. Similarly, India has tales of Suvarnabhumi, where Suvarnadvipa, the island of gold, is located. Jews and Phoenicians call this land by the most ancient name, the lands of Tarshish and Ophir. The Reversal Dictionary defines the area of Aurea Chersonesus as a peninsula of Southeast Asia extending south from the Isthmus of Kra in Thailand to Cape Tanjong Piai in Malaysia. Consists of southwest Thailand and the states of Malaya, peninsular Malaysia. The Philippine Islands form the northernmost part of the Malay archipelago. An inscription in Fort Santiago, attributed to the Philippine national hero Jose Rizal, says, "To foretell the destiny of a nation, it is necessary to open the book that tells of her past." Thank you for joining us in opening the book of the past, in hopes for a brighter future. Learning history, 5 things at a time.
But good afternoon, it's a pleasure to be here. Really it is. Voyages Beyond the Shore, Maritime Movement in the Age of Globalization. In a letter I received for this conference, it said, it's a historical movement still existing today that has been ubiquitous ever since man navigated the unknown corners of the world. Now the question is when? When did man start to navigate the unknown corners of the world? Now, very few people know that the story of Noah's Ark, diba ngayon para siyang myth or fable na. And it's a story to tell children at bedtime. But in the past, maybe less than 100 years ago, Phoenicians told the story of the flood. Everybody, the Chinese, Sima Qian, the grand historian, starts the history of China from their flood survivor, Niwa. We have the Egyptians, we have the Israelites. They start the story of mankind's civilization, the restart of mankind's civilization from the flood. So, you know, if like in Vedic texts sa mga Hindu, they call him Manu and his sons Sharma, Kaharma, and Japeti. The Greeks called him Uranus, whose sons were Cronus, Titan, and Iapetus. You know, it's just interesting how all over the world, there's this one guy who survived with his 3 sons and their wives. And the thing is, the reason I'm saying this is because the first direction to the land of gold, can we put it on? The first direction to the land of gold, our first set of directions, come from the Hebrew scriptures that, the Hebrew scriptures that call the Golden Lands by its most ancient name. The lands of Tarshish and Ophir. And especially kayo mga kabataan, makinig kayo kasi this could be, you know, very important in understanding who you are at sino ang ating mga ninuno. It's a very ancient land. After the deluge, according to, so let's get our bearings, no? After the deluge, the world was repopulated by Noah's 3 sons, according to myths and traditions, no? And this is shown by the TNO maps. Are you familiar with TNO maps? It's one of the most ancient maps. The TNO maps are called TNO because there's like a T in the middle and then an O around. So they're called TNO maps and they show the east on the top, kaya Orient yung sa taas. And they say that it's divided between the 3 sons of Noah. Asia is Sem, Shems, and Europa, Japhet. Africa is Ham. But these ancient continents, though it's not the same as what we have now in general, because now we have like 7 continents, diba? Pero now, in the ancient time, we have the Mare Magnum, we have the Red Sea, and then we have the Mediterranean Sea, and that's supposed to divide. It was the markers of the land. This is a map by Hecatus of Miletus, and this is around 500 BC. Guys, when you say 500 BC, that's 2,500 years ago. 2,500 years ago, this is the way they saw the world. They saw the world, Europe, there, and then Asia and Africa. They divided it into 3 continents because Europe, as we said, was like the son of Noah, Japheth, and then Africa became Ham, everything that was Asia. And is the son of Shem, the son Shem. And that's the Mediterranean Sea, and that water there that goes like that is the Red Sea. So, just to get our bearings. Now, we're going to go to a real world map. And this one is very rough. I colored it very roughly. And so, if you imagine that the top part went to Japheth, and the reddish part, that's Shem's, and Ham got this bluish part. So, it's theoretically, if it's according to what the ancient texts say, no? So, if Ham got that, and Shem got that. Let's see. So, Shem got the southern lands to the east then. He got southern lands to the east, and then we read in the word, in the table of nations, which is Genesis 10, that Eber, the great-grandchild of Shem, son of Noah, was the father of Joktan, the father of Ophir. And Ophir and his brothers were given the land to the east. So, now their settlement extended from Mesha as you go towards Sephar, the hill country of the east. Now, if the southern and eastern portion was Shem's, and then his son Ophir got the eastern portion of his southeastern lands, then we will think that, okay, so where is Ophir? So it's in the southeast. In fact, it's in the far east, right? So it's southeast, far east, and so that's very vague. I know, it's super vague. But then they still give us further directions. So this one's from the Word of God. And so, the land of Ophir is often talked of as the land of Tarshish and Ophir in the Bible. And they're talked of several times, and then you hear that the islands of, it's in the islands. Whenever the lands of Tarshish and Ophir are talked about, it's always their islands. And so, from these, the coastlands of the nation, si Tarshish naman, according to the Bible, he's the one who populated the coastlands, all the coastlands of the nations, yung mga island coastlands. And it's interesting na they say in the Bible, they were divided according to their language, according to their families, and into their nations. Do you know, when they call us Austronesians, they're talking about language. Because we are Austronesian speakers. When they say we're Tai-Kadai language speakers. So when we're called Austronesians, it's because of our language. So we were divided. So what we're looking for now, okay, general lang to. We're going to go more and more specific, and you'll be shocked at how specific. But now, generally, we're looking for a land. South, east, far east, an island where south hits, where the north will easily hit the south. So, a north, something in the southeast that's almost northwards. Now, let's get more specific directions. Second direction comes from Ptolemy, this is 2nd century Greece. Now, this is almost 2,000 years ago, 1,800 years or so. Now, from Ptolemy's world map, applying geometry and mathematics to the study of Earth's geography, 2nd century Ptolemy used scientific methods to project the sphere of the Earth onto a flat surface, making a world map with 8,000 places, including the Aurea Chersonesus. As you learned a while ago, the Aurea Chersonesus is the Golden Peninsula. And then according to everybody's story, inside the Golden Peninsula, you will find Chryse, which is an island or islands of gold. So he gave us the map, and scholars believe, ito yung close-up nung part where the Aurea Chersonesus is, and here's a later map cartographer tried to do a Nicholas Germanus in 1467, tried to copy the map of Ptolemy's geography, showing the Golden Chersonesus. And scholars believe that what he's referring to is actually the Malay Peninsula. So the scholars have already studied this, and they said, this is the Malay Peninsula. So, number 2 na, second set of directions, in the Far East, it's towards the north a little bit, but it's in the southern area, Southeast Asia. And then, it's in the Malay Peninsula. Okay. Next, third set of directions is the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, and this is it's a Greco-Roman, we don't actually know who wrote it. Some people think it was during the Roman period, but they don't know really who did it. They don't know if it's an Egyptian or it's a Greek or, whatever. But the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, has anybody heard of this, guys? Have you heard of the Periplus? Do you know what the Periplus is? Well, sailors, guys, Periplus means to sail. And the Periplus means to sail, and this is a Periplus, it's to sail the Erythraean Sea. Erythraean Sea is the ancient name for the Indian Ocean, including the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. So this whole area that includes the Indian Ocean, Persian Gulf, and the Red Sea is called the Erythraean Sea. And so he gave direction. This is a very ancient direction, telling us, so it starts from the coast along Africa, talks about the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, and then around the coast sailing. It's a guide to trade and navigation of this area. And then he goes around the India, and then he goes to Ganges where he ends. But before he ends, he says, there's a place that's really, really interesting. There's a place that's really, really interesting, and I want to tell you about it. So he gives some instructions about another place. And he says, and just opposite this river Ganges, there is an island in the ocean, the last part of the inhabited world, towards the east, under the rising sun itself. It's called Crete. And that's the island of gold. So he's giving us directions to the island of gold. Now, I drew an arrow from the Ganges in a globe. And drawing an arrow from the globe, we hit the Philippines. The last part of the inhabited islands towards the sea. But, other people could say, well, maybe not. But the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea is a guide. So they won't give just one direction. They gave two, so that you can, correlate it. You can't just give one direction and then that's the place already. That's too vague. So, he also said about Crete, so when you're in Crete, he said, after this region, which is Crete, under the very north, the sea outside, so the sea ending in a land called This. Now, This is the ancient name of China. So let's see this. If we go from the Ganges, going east, we hit the Philippines. And as we draw a line going north, we hit China. So, I don't know if you can find any other island that will do that. But that's for me, I find that very interesting. But it's not just one. It's just that, but we're only in number 3. Are we in number 3? Yeah, we're only in number 3. Number 4, we'll get a little bit more specific too. Documento, number 98, 1520 to 1528. Spain made this. And have you heard of this one, the Documento number 28? They wrote a bunch of stuff. It even includes Magellan's logs when he was on his ship coming to the Philippines. Documento number 98 is another Periplus in a way, but this is not called a Periplus kasi it's written by the Spanish, no? It's another guide to navigation and trade compiled by our Spanish colonizers, giving direction from the African coast. So this one was pretty cool because I got the Spanish documents and I tried to translate it by trying to translate using Google Translate because I couldn't find an English translation. But so, it basically gives an instruction from the coast of Africa, the same thing as the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea. It goes to the Red Sea, goes to the Persian Gulf, goes to India, the coast of India, and then, but it goes further. It goes through the Ganges, and then goes through the different nations, and then it tells us about this place, Lecios, or Ophir. Let me go closer. And gives directions on how to get to there. At this time, they kind of changed the name of Ophir to, I don't know the pronunciation of this, Lequios. I've only seen it written, pero sometimes it's pronounced, it's written with a C, sometimes with a Q. I think it's a soft sound, so it's Lucius or something, Lusos, something like that. So I've just seen it written down, never pronounced. And this is a rough translation that I asked a Spanish-Portuguese friend of mine to translate. So better than Google Translate. The reason also that I asked him to translate it is because the Spanish was so old that even Google Translate couldn't understand what the words were. So in front of the mentioned China, in front of China and its lands, there are many islands in the sea. In fact, it says something like an archipelago in the sea. And beyond these islands, a land very large. They say it's tierra firma, landmass, and other islands where every year there used to arrive 3 or 4 juncos, Asian-style ships with white people that are big merchants and very wealthy. They bring lots of golden bars and silver and silk and other things that the Chinese carry. To those they call Lequios or Lusos, and those of Malak, Malaysia, say they are better people and better traders and wealthier and better dressed and more honest than the Chinese. So if you're Chinese, you're talking about me. That's what just the translation. Anyway, so this is the directions. They're saying in front of China and on top of Malaysia. If you sailors, you guys know what's in front of China, between China and Malaysia. What nation is there? So he said it's in front of China, between Malaysia and China. So then it is what? Right. Now, if this is not enough for you, let's go to our 5th set of directions. And this one is so specific that it's going to blow your mind. Now, you guys know latitude and longitude? Yes? Okay, you can tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. Okay? Because, have you heard of the voyages and adventures of this guy named Ferdinand Mendez Pinto? He wrote a book. And a lot of people made fun of him because he's like, oh Pinto, you're such a storyteller. Kasi kasama sa libro niya was that something happened. So this was in 1500s, no? He said that he actually got shipwrecked on the islands of gold or Lusos, the Lequios. He said, I got shipwrecked and my ship landed on the island of gold. And he said, here's how he described it. Let's see. He described Lequios or Lusos as belonging to a large group of islands. So he said, it's not just one island. It's a lot of islands. It's a lot of islands that had abundant resources of gold and silver. And in his journal, he had the audacity or sobrang yabang niya, according to some people, na-shock sila, na he gave specific details on the location of Gold Island. He put it at a latitude of 9 and 20 on a meridian similar to that of Japan. Wait a minute. Do you guys know where 9 and 20 is? 9 degrees north, 20? Where is that? That is, if you go even into Google Maps right now, you will go somewhere in Butuan and Abusan. Somewhere there. That's the very heart of our country. It's right there. He said, that's where I got shipwrecked, and this is the islands of gold. And he said, he gave directions, and he said the people there have so much gold. And then, the meridian, guys, if you guys know your meridians, the meridian is slightly off. Japan is 135 degrees, while Philippines is around the 125 degrees. But, we have to remember, this is 1500s. the meridians were not officially set until 1851. So a guy who's trying to tell us it's similar to the meridian, he's not saying it's exactly the meridian of Japan. He says it's 9 and 20, but it's just similar to the meridian of Japan. Telling you, you had a name before you were colonized. To keep us enslaved is to make us forget who we are. Is to make us believe na nandito tayo sa ating lupain dahil tayo napadpad lang dito, aksidente lang, basta tamad-tamad tayo, di man lang tayo mag-build ng ating mga ancient city, hindi katulad ng iba, may mga city sila. Mas malaki pa ang city natin. Hindi lang natin nakikilala. Sobra kasi tayong naniwala sa ating mga colonizers. Unfortunately, our history is written by the colonizers. Our history is written by whoever wins the war. And so, for hundreds of years, sinabihan tayo ng mga Spanish na ganito tayo, ganyan lang tayo, wala tayong magawa, ganyan. And we believed it. And then we have the, when the Americans came, they also taught us history again. But I don't know if you've read the other Philippine history book by Christine Diaz. It's really good. The other Philippine history book tells you about the history, the parts that were erased. And it really, really opens your mind about who you are as a Filipino people. You see, the danger when your history is erased, you do not learn from your history. You make the same mistake again and again. Paulit-ulit tayo, paulit-ulit. We'll be doing the same mistakes again and again. China, they colonized us in ancient times. According to our colonizers, the Spaniards. It's not according to me. It's according to the colonizers, the Spaniards, in ancient times. And according to the ancient vessels that we've been finding and artifacts, it seems like it was during the Zhou dynasty, back in 1000 BC. But if China colonized us in ancient times, we were also a colony of America. We have to remember that. And, we have to remember that these colonizers, when they come here, there's always, something. You have to remember our history na kung ano nangyari. Kunyari, like in Christine Diaz, she was explaining, we forget, because it wasn't in our history books, that Filipinos fought side by side with America. We got rid of the Spaniards. Then suddenly, the Americans went behind our back, went to the Spaniards, and the Spaniards sold the Philippines to America. And they came back. And when they colonized the Philippines, do you know that in the first few months of American colonization, they killed more people than the hundreds of years of Spanish colonization? We have to remember. We have to remember and find out our history. But we are so sold out na we might make the same mistake again. Oh, andyan na naman ang China. Kailangan nating labanan, kailangan natin ng Amerika. They want to help us. Let's find out first, what does that help mean? Let's find out our history. What happened to us? Napaso na tayo. Let's learn. Let's learn. So, there's just so much stuff. Like, sabi niyo nga po, there's so much greed, so much wanting to be the greatest, the power. The Filipinos are amazing. We just love people. We don't go out and try to colonize or try to, we don't do that. And maybe, to some countries, they'll say we're not that superpower or whatever. But you know what? I just want you to know, I'm proud to be a Filipino. The more I learn about our history, the more I learn about sino ba talaga tayo, I'm proud to be a Filipino people. I'm proud. So, I don't know if we have time for any questions. Baka may mga tanong kayo, pero if not,